I was doing my prayer and meditation, and after that, I listened to another one of the people that I um, prescribe to, who is a spiritualist, and she was talking about the power of the divine as far as our connection to one another on a spiritual level and how we should treat one another. And sometimes we have to be reminded that we are connected on some level and that we have to show each other respect, because what happens is if we don't, the divine is going to let us know that how we behave can affect other parts of our life. And I mentioned in previous audios how gangster the divine is. See, we think that consequences are supposed to affect us a certain way in our life, and the divine kind of reminds us that consequences are basically not our responsibility, but consequences are in the hands of the divine. So when the chips fall, we don't have any control how they fall or where they fall or when they're going to fall. And that's what it is. So I'm kind of reminded of that, and it made me think of something. You know, when things happen in our lives, we understand that, there's a possibility there's going to be repercussion of our actions. We understand that. And sometimes what we'll do is when we get a little older, what we'll try to do in our little human brains is we'll try to circumvent those circumstances by performing certain acts or doing certain things and thinking that we will try to soften the blow for the consequences of those actions. And most of the time, the shit don't work. I'm going to give you an example. I know this might fall on some sensitive ears, but I'm going to give you one example that's very common that people do, and it still doesn't work. Let's just say that there's a person who spent their life just being a very selfish, very rebellious person who just did whatever the hell they wanted to do in their life. They did everything. Okay, let's just say a little bit of everything. They did a little bit of everything in their life. They were promiscuous, they did drugs, they did alcohol, they stole, they probably didn't get a decent education, they probably cheated on their wife or husband, they probably, didn't keep a decent job. They did a little bit of everything, and they just didn't care about the effects of, of their actions. And now they've gotten up in age and they realize that they don't have anything to show for what they have. Okay? But they haven't done anything to change their ways, so to speak. But now they're starting to look around them and realize that they don't have anything to show for what they have. They're beginning to realize that they don't have any fruit. They don't have any fruit. So instead of just going through the process of regret, because regret has a process, see? There is a process of going through regret, and a lot of people haven't fully gone through the process of regret. There's a process of grief. You've heard of the 5 stages of grief. Well, there's some stages to regret. When you go through regret, that involves a whole bunch of sorrow and acknowledgement, and there's a whole lot of work involved in things where you've got to go through your spirit and you got to do some spiritual house cleaning in order to improve yourself. And I'll talk about that later in another audio. And this person hasn't fully done that. They haven't fully acknowledged their own shortcomings and done their own spiritual house cleaning. So there's still some pride and stubbornness inside of them that they're still trying to hold on to. So because of their lack of spiritual house cleaning, what they're doing is they're trying to seek some kind of quick fix or some type of workaround, because they already know in the back of their mind that there's some consequences for the actions that's coming. Well, the consequences are already there because of the simple fact that they've looked around and realized that there are no fruits to bear. There are no fruits, okay? They've looked around all their life. They've been happy-go-lucky. They've been selfish. They've done, they've mistreated people, blah, 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 blah. And they've looked up and they're 50, 60 years old and they don't have anything to really smile, at. They don't have anything in comparison to their peers to be happy about. So that's the start of the consequences, and it's a preview of things to come. So they're starting to feel the consequences of their actions, and the chips are starting to fall, and things are starting to happen, one by one, little bit by little bit, and it's starting to hurt, and it's starting to hurt bad. And because they don't have the spiritual wherewithal or the mental capacity to be able to deal with these issues, because they never developed them, they don't want to suffer the consequences. So to avoid doing that, the first thing they do is all of a sudden they become religious. Or they become spiritual. Oh, let me go get saved because this is too much for me. Oh, no, I can't handle. You know what? Let me, oh, my goodness, I'm dealing with this and this and this and this and this. Let me, you know what? I remember back in the day, Reverend so-and-so had told me I needed to join the church. And I think I need to do that now. Yes, I think I need to do that now because too much stuff is happening to me. How many times have you come across someone and they join the church? And you see that they join the church, and the first thing you ask them is why? Well, I noticed that so and such, all these things started happening to me back to back to back. See, they're not doing it because they want to become spiritually aware and become a better person. They're doing it because shit's hitting in the fan way too fast. The cows are coming home. The chickens are coming to roost. Stuff bad is happening. See, all that stuff that happened before is coming back on them. It has nothing to do with them wanting to be a better person. See, if nothing bad had started to happen, they would have never considered wanting to develop their own spirituality. They would never have wanted to have a closer walk with the Creator. They would have never thought about it. See? They don't want to deal with the consequences. They're trying to circumvent having to deal with the consequences by getting closer to God. And usually these people, they're on the fast track. They'll join the church today, and then the next day they're in the new members fellowship, and then the next month they're in 20 different ministries, and then the month after that they're on the deacon and the deaconess's board, and then the next month after that they're on the classes to become a associate minister, and then a year later, all of a sudden, they're sitting up in the pulpit next to the pastor. Within a year's time, all of a sudden, they're second to the head of the church. They're on the fast track to Jesus. They're doing it because all of a sudden, all of those things that they've done in the past, they have to answer for, and everything's coming in like a thunderstorm. They got the answer for all the bullshit. They can't handle it spiritually. So they finally realize that there's nothing physical in this world that can prevent them from having to answer to it. And they realize that finally that God is real. They finally realize that God is the only thing that can help them with this, to help them navigate through this. So instead of them taking a spiritual inventory and checking themselves and actually developing a relationship on how to deal with the circumstances and navigate through the circumstances and dealing with the consequences like a big boy or a big girl, and developing a fruitful life as a new and reborn person. No, they want to take the quick way out and say, oh, what, you know what? I'm going to join the church and pretend to be a child of God so that way I won't have to deal with the circumstances. But see, what happens is they go through all that and still have to deal with the circumstances anyway. So they play this fake Christian thing in order to try to avoid dealing with the circumstances, but they still got to deal with them anyway. Y'all know what I'm talking about. And the reason why I use that example is I'm not poking fun at Christianity. I'm not doing that. I'm using that example is because it's the most frequently used method that people have to avoid having to deal with their karma. It's the most frequently used method. And I'm going to use another example that people use Christianity to avoid. A lot of women that I see that I have grown up with, a lot of them that were fast ass, because that's what little girls used to be referred to. A lot of them that I knew, that I grew up with, that were fast ass, that were out there in the street, that gave their bodies away and everything else, that were sugar mamas and sugar daddies and hookers and everything else, and they thought it was cute and thought it was funny, that have grown older, that don't have a man, kids grown all by themselves and everything else. All of a sudden, their sister, deaconesses, minister, pastor, everything else now, because they don't want to deal with the consequences of the fact they've got health problems galore, and they don't want to have to deal with the fact that they have to suffer the consequences of their actions. Now, some of them are pastors and deaconesses because they walked through the darkness of their consequences and they are spiritually reborn. I applaud you if you have. Yes, they have given themselves wholeheartedly and they have spiritually turned their lives around. Kudos to you. But there are some of them who have turned to the church to avoid the consequences. I'm talking to the ones who have turned to the church and religion and spirituality to avoid the consequences. If you're one of these people who have turned to the church and spirituality to avoid the consequences, newsflash, you are wasting your time. Stay home because it's not going to work. It doesn't matter. If you do wrong, you are going to face the consequences. So please do not waste your time by thinking that instead of not taking spiritual responsibility, that you could turn around and take the route of going spiritual and religious, and that is going to circumvent your karma and it's going to circumvent your punishment. You're going to get your punishment whether you're in it or in the church or in spirituality or not. You have to answer regardless. We all make mistakes in this world. We all fuck up. When we do, understand that you're going to have to pay for your mistakes at some point or another. It's going to happen, whether you're behind the pulpit, whether you're in the pew, or whether you're out in the street. You're going to have to pay for your mistake. Don't play with spirituality. So if you choose to go to the route of spirituality or religion, make sure you do it with a whole heart and a whole spirit, and not as a vehicle to fill your pockets or to run away from consequences, because you are asking for a whole new set of problems. You really are. And the divine does not take that lightly. You think you have problems now. Play around with religion and spirituality if you want to. The best thing for you to do is for you and spirit to sit down and have a conversation. Address your own needs first before you affiliate yourself with that stuff. Search yourself. Because if you're using those things as a means to avoid answering for your own consequences, You think you're in trouble now. You think you're in trouble now. This is a warning to you. I'm telling you, it's a warning. Everything is connected, people. Everything is connected. I'm telling you, the divine is paying attention to everything. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and let you guys go. Peace to you.